All right, Ellen, welcome again and tell us
Thank you.
who you are and what kind of cases keep you up at night.
My name is Alan Bernstein. I'm an attorney in South Florida. I do mostly criminal defense, emphasis on DUI work. But I was talking to you earlier about two major cases I have now that have been going on that I've been using a little bit of AI with. What keeps me up at night is these cases. They're extensive, they're time consuming, they're research intensive, but they're also, I guess, intellectually intensive because I have a lot of questions I have to ask, and sometimes I could save some time by using AI to a degree. I check everything. Quite honestly, a client today was sending me some stuff on a motion that I did, and I wanted him to look into it and put it through the AI again. He has a more full access to than I do to one of them.
Did your conclusion come out different from AI?
A little bit, yes. AI hit generally, but it really used it for the wrong proposition. It had the general proposition, but it didn't really apply, I thought, to my case. No, so I have to check these cases no matter what. I've used ChatGPT, I've used Claude, I've used this Chinese one that Quinn, and I believe at one point I even used Reuters or Westlaw, one of the two, for some research to get a start. But remember, as everybody says, it's so true. When you're doing case law research, it's only a start. It wants to please you. We're not at a point, at least that I know of in AI, where it's going to give me the definitive answer. And I think that anyone would be negligent relying solely on the AI doing your research for you without looking over again. The thing I've learned so far is even if it's not hallucinating, I'm not going to get a good answer unless I put the right prompt in. And
I
that's the
like how you
important.
say it wants to please you, right?
Yes. Yeah, it wants to
It's
please
not
me.
exactly the same as helping you.
Okay, since 1981, you have been practicing criminal law. Now, when someone first mentioned AI to you in a legal context, what was your gut reaction? Like, how do you feel about it?
Okay, I'm one of the old timers here. I felt like it. Oh my God, I'm in deep, you know what? How am I going to be able to handle this? What am I going to be able to do to use it? I know how to turn my computer on, of course. I need something easy. And AI seems like it's getting more unattainable and it has to be easy. I am using something now. It's a small amount of AI. I've got this little thing here. It's a recorder. I don't have it now. It's called Plaud, Plaud. It's a side. They
Okay.
make it in a note pin and they make it like this. And what it does is it records it can record a conversation, which I get with permission. I was going to do it today here, but I don't know what I did with it. So I could recall what I was saying. Oh, here it is. I can show it to you. This is what I use here. It's simple as
Hmm.
can be. Little, looks like a little credit card. And they make these things you can use. I'm turning it on now, actually. They make these things that you can see the little red spot when it's on. And that means we're recording here. Hopefully, you guys don't have a problem me doing that. I'm going to, while I demonstrate this to you. Now, what this does is it records my entire conversation. Now, this helps me in a few ways. Let's say I'm sitting down, I'm using it regularly now when I meet a client. It's got AI to some degree, small amount. When I meet a client, I'll sit down with them and I'll discuss the case with them. I'll discuss what exactly they want and what I'm looking for and what we can agree and disagree upon and what the client wants me to do. And for example, one client wants me to plea out his case. And I'm against pleading the case out at that point, and I knew it. So I said, I'm going to turn this on. I'm going to record our conversation, and I want to go through this with you to make sure you're clear. You do not want me taking depositions of the witnesses that if I can get them to say something different, it may win your case or it may at least reduce your time in jail and everything else. You understand? I went through the whole colloquial with him, and then I said, "Thank you. You understand it's been recorded." I told him up front because we're a two-party state down here in Florida. You have to have both permission, both parties. I did that. And then what happened was I then saved it. And what it does is it hooks up to my computer here. I can turn on the Claude thing and it will transfer over. And then I can save the recording anywhere I want. And it seems to be a little more accurate than my iPhone. And I also can have it transcribed for me word for word as a transcription, or it could do it as a note with summary, or it can do it. I can ask it questions. It's not a real great AI thing, but it will summarize my meeting. Or if I have a little, if I'm in a small seminar or having this, I'll give you an example. We have a group of attorneys, six of us, help defending the same kind of cases down here in Palm Beach County. It's a sex charge case where they're decoys. We call them social media vigilantes down here, and we meet and we all have an agreement, attorney agreement, where it's privileged between all of us. But I ask permission, and some other guys do before we get started. Can we record the meeting? We say yes, and then we record it. We then can look at the summary of the meeting and what It will tell us what things it looks like we need to conclude to do at the end of the meeting. It will actually summarize it for us. That's on a minor level of AI. I like it. I can use it. It's to my level, low. Okay. The other AIs I've used started to say, I wrote a 63-page memorandum of law in a DUI manslaughter case. And I did all the research myself. No AI, no nothing. I mean, I spent hours and hours writing the motion and memorandum of law. And the judge set it down for 3 months down the line. And within that 3 month period, a new case came down and the state was going to argue it. And I read that new case. I didn't think it's applicable. I thought it was what they call dicta, what they might do in a case like ours that I had, but not what they would do. But it was in the District Court of Appeals, what rules part of Florida I'm in. The cases I had that I relied upon, it was never been talked about here in this part of Florida, the Fourth District Court. But the way the law is, if it's never been talked about in any other District Court of Appeals, we got to follow that district court unless you're going to appeal it up higher there to the Supreme Court of Florida. Judge came down and said, denied. I was not happy about it. And I tried to explain it was dicta. It's not law. He doesn't have to follow it, but he was concerned about it. And he's a good judge, really good judge. I like him. I think he was mistaken. I thought he was mistaken, but I also thought he's the kind of guy, if he did make a comment at the end, if you find something different, come back. Well, it turns out I was right. I believe I was right. There was a case that case he was relying upon was appealed to the Supreme Court of Florida, and the Supreme Court did not find that it was in opposition to the Second and Fifth District Court of Appeals, which I was relying upon at the Fourth. And I argued to the judge, well, if that's the case, then if it's not opposite it, then therefore it can't be the same issue. Therefore, it was dicta, like I said. Now, here's where the AI came in.
So what did he say, the judge?
The judge granted my motion at a rehearing almost a year later, and now it's on appeal. The state's appealing it to the Florida Supreme Court, and they're asking, and it's been on appeal for 5 months. Now, the interesting part about it was I brought an associate with me to help out because it's going to be like a 12-day trial. And I like to say I'm getting older and I don't want to do 12-hour days, 14-hour days, 12 days straight. I need a little help, but I'm the lead counsel. But so what we did was we fed in my 63-page motion. We prompted to please make it AI. You're a criminal defense lawyer, you're one of the top guys in the state, something like that. I put in there. Make this a 10-minute argument out of these 63 pages. And believe it or not, 6.5 minutes later, the argument was done. Now, I would have never trusted AI to do that. I read it, it summarized it, but I'm a wordy person.
Right, but you checked, right?
I checked and
Sure.
everything was fine. And I would never have trusted it, except that I knew it was important, though, because that 63-page report, I knew the judge read every page. I know my judge. That's important. I knew the judge. I would have to go over all those cases and show him how they were different because I know he read them, even though I spelled out what they said. I can almost guarantee you he read every single one of those cases. You can't say that of all
So
judges. But I
Okay.
did do the AI to make it a 6 to 8 minute argument. And after reviewing it, it looked good. I kept it. I apologize. I kept it. I don't know how to even slow this down. I kept it and I was very impressed with it. And that was helpful to me as opposed to spend 3 hours drafting up an argument to last an hour or two.
Alan, if I can ask, which model did you use?
I used ChatGPT for that one.
ChatGPT. Okay.
And I really like Claude better than ChatGPT, honestly, to be frank with you, I do. But I
So
used ChatGPT that time.
so I think that is great. But now I'm just moving towards like some of the advances, like some of the states, not necessarily Florida, but there is something called Compass algorithm. So
I've
judges
heard
in
of it.
states, yeah. So judges in states like Wisconsin are using AI to predict whether a defendant will reoffend and using that score in sentencing. So does something like that you terrify you, or you think that's the right way to do it? What is your opinion on that?
Well, it's funny. I'm reading a book right now by Ann Burgess. Ann Burgess is an expert witness, and she specializes in assault type of cases. And she testified. She's worked with the FBI and testified on their behalf before, but she's also worked on the Bill Cosby case for the victim. Well, it turns out the victim's one of them. And she's also worked on the Menendez case. She was the expert for, I think, Eric Menendez from the famous case of late 90s. And she was talking about that particular issue you brought up to like chapter 6 in her book about predicting the future, for example, of a sex offender, what they will be based on what they're doing these days. And she finds that you really need someone with experience to do it. It's very difficult for AI because it doesn't take, I think it takes out, they're not human yet. They don't, it takes out the human factor in it, in the predictions, and to rely solely on a machine to do that. Well, we don't even need lawyers either. We don't need judges. We can
Mm.
feed it into, we can feed it to a
We
judge.
don't
So there
need
has to be,
humans at all, but somebody has to do the crime.
that's exactly it. So there should be, the AI is good for a lot of things in the future, and I see that it can be very, very helpful as it progresses. And there are little things it does. I use a program now for my case management. They're introducing, they want me to go to do their little seminar. And I did one of their mini seminars. They're trying to sell the AI side of the program to the people that already, to everybody, including the people that already use it for case management. Mark, that's the one I end up going with when I left that California group. Okay,
Mhm.
to have something that it seemed to fit my needs. Now they're offering AI. I did use it for 7 days. I found it was decent, but it wasn't great. It was exaggerating too. It did a few things that were helpful, but quite frankly, I don't know if I needed it as an addition where I could have just used another program for it. It would have been nice if they have it more adapted. I did have a company called Filevine I used for a little while I was using the company I have now, and they sold me only 5 units, I think it was, of their AI in 2024. I think it was 24, 25. I was not, with all due respect, personally, I was not impressed with it. All it was doing was I gave it on a case where I have that DUI manslaughter, someone was seriously injured in it too. So I fed all its medical records there. That's what all these AI civil cases, they do civil. That's where I think the big money is, I think. And I fed the medical records and I just said, use the word femur anytime, 'cause I knew she broke her leg in the accident. And I put it in the search and never found it. I was not real impressed with
That's
a program that couldn't do that.
I mean, what you're talking is just beautiful because humans are special and human brain is also special. So I think in the future we'll have a partnership. You bring something else that AI doesn't. And I think if you can even prognosticate, I would say it will not. The AI is good where it is, but humans are good where they are. And that points to what you're saying. It's a partnership. You need
Yeah,
very special understanding, very special legal, which they often lack, those models.
I
yeah,
agree.
yeah. So for
And
example,
you
right?
added that the judge, he reads every page. That's super important knowledge.
If I
Yeah,
didn't know the judge in that case, I may have used AI, but I would have not said narrow it down to 6 to 10 minutes because I knew I'd have to explain it a little further and figuring that maybe the judge did not read everything and I need to give a better overview. In that case, because I knew the judge, I did not have to do that. I got it right to the point. Chris probably made him feel good. He wasn't going to spend 2 hours listening to me, to be frank with you. I wouldn't want to listen to me for 2 hours.
It's
That's just
awesome.
my thought.
Do you know, Alan, why I learned law in the first place? I wanted to be with lawyers. I considered them smart,
See what
and I was not disappointed that these guys really
else you
know what
can't find.
smart is.
Well, some lawyers are smart, some aren't. I don't think you got to be super smart to be a lawyer. I think you're one of the brightest. Put it this way, Mark, you're one of the smartest guys I know, and you didn't choose to practice law. Okay.
Well,
yeah,
that's because it was not easy. And my wife said she would never be married to a lawyer. So I would have
My wife
another
probably feels
problem.
the same way, just but she's stuck.
Ah, too late
exactly.
But I get it. But you can be smart, but AI can help you with a lot of things, and I know that.
there.
And I haven't got to the point where it's helping me anywhere near as much as it should be. And part of it's because it's like I see the stove light on and it looks pretty hot. And I don't know if I want to touch the stove or come too close to it. That's probably part of it. But so that's why I guess you have to have it an easy setup. I downloaded Claude to my phone and it keeps reminding me when I check it out, check it out. It's been 3 weeks. I haven't used it yet. But that
Yeah,
doesn't mean I won't. But I have not. Now, but it has helped me. I have a blog on my website and I've been doing it now for about 2.5 months. And I write up the blog and the AI has been actually helping me clean it up. And it's probably a good portion has helped me tremendously with the blog for me to write my articles.
I'll
That's
read
been a
it.
good thing
Yeah,
for me.
I will. Yes. And I remember you study nonstop. Like you go to this conference where they teach you how the forensics lab works, and then you can attack the evidence. You taught me a lot about the knowledge that you have.
Well, it's true. In fact, that same seminar, 1 year's forensic evidence regarding blood alcohol, the other one's drugs and blood. They're
In
having it.
Chicago, right?
Well, that's it in Chicago. That's one. That's the lab in Chicago. I went to 3 times out of 4, and then I didn't go the 4th time because I left the 3rd time early because they told me the summary was gonna come before 12 o'clock, where I had my plane flight out, and they changed it, so I asked for a copy of the video, and after, like, 17 times asking, I gave up. They weren't sending it to me. But I do another thing too. See, I belong to 2 the top organizations for DUI attorneys in the country, NCDD and DUI-DLA. And NCDD does a different one. They call they call it a scientist, the science part of it. They have one in Arlington, Texas, that I've been down to. It's now both there. It used to be Fort Collins, Colorado at a lab, and one in Arlington, Texas. Now they're both 1 year's, like I said, alcohol, 1 year's drugs. This year is the drugs. I haven't signed up yet. It's set for July, where I would go to Arlington and actually go to it's an 8-day seminar. It's an 8-day, it's
Wow.
intense. You go through everything, and you have to learn this stuff. That's where I learned that you can manipulate the results. If you have an unscrupulous scientist in there, it can be manipulated. I think I sent you
Wow.
that book to read it, Mark,
You
regarding
sent me the book, but not a word about unscrupulous scientists there.
well, there's not in the book about that, but there's ways. When I took the seminar, they showed you how they can, when you have a chromatogram, it starts out at a level cross, and then you have the different levels, what it measures. Well, you could have it that it doesn't measure at such a tight pace, and the bottom line will go higher. That means you'll miss little blips. And those blips could mean that there is something in the blood that is not, that shouldn't, that will probably give you a false positive. So you
That
really always want
reminds me, in AI, they talk about poisoning the training data. That sounds similar.
It may be. They can do that. It's possible that they can cut out part of it, and you gotta that's why the expert witnesses in these type cases always ask for the raw data so they can run it themselves, so
Yeah.
they can see where it goes, and not when you lift the line up a little bit and make the sensitivity a lot less sensitive. The more sensitive you are, the better data you're gonna get. But I do that, and the May 1st, I have another one in Texas coming up, but I'm doing it by Zoom, another seminar. I was out in Las Vegas at the Sahara in November in Las Vegas doing a seminar on sex crime defense. The case that I'm handling now, which I've been using AI with a lot, helping me draft these ideas and motions that I come up with. Although I'm checking all the cases, and about 50% of them are not what I need at all, even though it's coming up with this stuff. That seminar was very helpful because it was from the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and they had some good ideas. And I actually put on the blog up there. They have their own blog through the Florida and the national across the country. And I've written a couple blogs where I've had people say they've been nice articles because people don't usually have that. I apologize. I don't know how to turn this phone off. But AI can be very helpful. But I do go to a lot of seminars because I want to keep myself updated. I actually was thinking about coming to the one in Houston. There's one in Houston in
You're
June.
welcome. Yes,
Thank
okay.
you. Mark Lanier, I spoke to you about that. Mark Lanier is a civil lawyer.
Yes.
But last year, he had it almost on, I guess he had a major portion of his whole seminar, the 4-day seminar on AI and what he uses. And I didn't make that seminar. I wish I would have made it last year. I'm still debating if I'm going to go this year because out of the 1,300 people that come there, about 1,280 of them are civil lawyers, and the other 20, like myself, do criminal defense. But it helps you become a better lawyer. So, and when there's money, it seems like money's more important than lives in a civil lawyer's way of looking at it. So they seem to be
Yes.
more ahead of us, criminal defense lawyers, in many ways in using technology for their cases. Because there's millions and millions depending on it, and they're willing to spend what it takes to get to those millions and millions. And unfortunately, defense attorneys don't have the money to defend the average everyday person like O.J. Simpson would. I look
Yeah, so
back
I
and show
think
my
that
age.
right. Yeah, no, so that exactly brings to the next question, right? So let's say if prosecutors get powerful AI tools and public defenders don't have that kind of budget with them, right? So in your opinion, isn't AI just widening the already massive power imbalance in the criminal justice system?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. And most public defender officers, you're right, because there was down here in Florida, for example, in Broward County, the public defender office doesn't even order the transcripts because it's too expensive to get them from the court reporters. They keep the audio of it and they try to use that to cross-examine. Now, I know there's new companies out there now that are offering to special prices to public defenders to do some of these transcripts. I've heard about it recently. And one of them's called, I think, Riv. I don't know what that's about exactly. I read about that. Transcript something. There's another one. I've saw a couple of them. A couple attorneys talk about them, but they're fairly new. I heard about them when I was in a seminar in Miami, the Trial Lawyers Summit in January. They were talking about 2 or 3 of these companies that do that. Plus, they all advertise. They're all down there like, with a booth and telling you what they can do. So I glanced at a few of those things. But you're right, it does widen it unless somebody can provide these attorneys, get them on equal level, because the little guy, especially in criminal defense, doesn't have a chance without having help. Or they
Yeah.
got the state attorney's office against them. They got 10 people. A sole practitioner like myself has me. I only have a certain amount of hours I could work.
Yeah. And especially when like deep fake videos, right, surface as an evidence. Now AI generated audio of a defendant confessing. As a defense lawyer, how do you even begin to fight that, right? Because you need a lot of tools and technology to prove that this is deep fake at first instance. So
Well, one of the toughest things is that's changed over the last 5 years or so is body cams. Officers are wearing body cams. And what you have is
okay.
5 officers on the scene wearing a body cam. And now when I do a simple DUI case, I suddenly, instead of looking at a 35-minute body cam, I got to look at 5 35-minute body cams. And I got to do it slow. A 35-minute body cam doesn't mean 35 minutes of review by me. It may mean an hour and a half for 35 minutes. So that takes a lot out of it. There are, I heard, AI programs that can look at stuff and can actually, there's a program out. And I know, Mark, we talked about that a couple years ago. You can have
When
a
did we use
video.
it? It works even faster than humans.
Yes,
It
you could.
reviews, it's 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Right. It can
Okay.
sit there and take it could sit there on a video, a body cam, and then on the right-hand side, it can put the transcript of it, and you can actually punch in a search engine, hit search, and you could find that word and hit where that. And I think that's tremendous. I think that was ahead of its time. 2 years ago, that was ahead of everybody. There's a few guys that have it now, I heard, but that was 2 years ago ahead of everybody that I knew of at that time. So
Good. That's
it
really
is
great.
helpful.
Yeah. And so, like police departments, right, are using AI for predictive policing nowadays. Like, for example, like flagging some of the neighborhoods and individuals before a crime is even committed. So, from defense attorney's perspective, do you see something is wrong in the picture, or you feel that it is a great tool for better policing?
Well, it may be a great tool for better policing if you're the police. And if you happen to be the victim, but what you're doing is, at some degree, you're violating people's rights because you're stopping them. If you remember years ago, New York pulled that. They had their police officers, anybody that didn't look right, they they stopped on the street. That was going on for a while in New York till they finally stopped that procedure. Crime went down somewhat, but people's rights, their civil rights were violated left and right, pardon the pun, but they were violated in predictive. It's like that movie with Tom Cruise in years ago where I forget the name of the movie off the top of my head, but it was predictive policing. And anything can happen in human beings and things like that. To stop someone like that and do that, I don't like that. I think that's getting a little too far.
That's
I even had a
science
case.
fiction. I remember I read something
It's
like that.
science fiction, and they're going to get to that. And if it predicts it in a month, you're going to commit a crime. My God, I mean,
Then
they're
you
going to
have
arrest
to.
you now. I mean, that to me is science fiction. One day it may get to that, but even that what they have now is they have those license plate readers out now. You can drive by a street, you're down the street, and it reads your license plate, and it will go through a whole database to determine if you committed a crime before. Next thing you know, you're getting pulled over by the police for failure to maintain a single lane where you're on a road by yourself and it's your word against the police officers. And you're being stopped, and who knows what they're going to find in the car from the illegal stop.
Yeah.
That is a lot of ways it could be bad, but they're just an example I know of my own personal use because they're not supposed to keep that data for more than 30 days in their computer, supposedly under it was a company, I can't think of the name of the company. It came out about 14 years ago. A well-known research company did some research on it because I pulled the paper out when I had one of these cases and found it. They violate a lot of our rights by this predictive stuff and keeping stuff on citizens that break our. We're having that now with geofence warrants and stuff. The warrants from the
Mm.
that they're doing now on these criminal cases where They want everybody's phone. They want to know, they want to track where they're at. They want to follow where they're at. The case law, I think, is a case called State versus Riley in California. It deals, it's maybe the main case on at this point. The government's intruding on everything that we have. They're subpoenaing records from Google, from Microsoft, Apple, and they're getting this information to place people even somewhere in a city. But I read a case one time where they tried to do that with somebody, predict where it was, and when the defense got an expert, they found out that this thing was so accurate to predict that the defendant was actually in the middle of the Hudson River. Couldn't have been in the middle of the Hudson River. So there are problems with these things. They bounce off. There's all kinds of problems when you use predictive stuff or you use technology and you don't back it up with some kind of safeguards.
Right.
What would be
So,
the safeguards?
yeah,
I'm sorry.
What would be the safeguards? I know
Well,
why I ask is because I have these conversations.
Well, it depends on what particular you're talking about. I think one of the safeguards has to be there has to be some human beings behind this thing that have some actual experience that can be behind it. You can't run a program and expect it to just show you things. Maybe you can, but in my mind, most of the time you cannot just run a program and come up with an answer. You have to have someone who has some idea what that answer means or what the weaknesses of the program are before you stick cuffs on somebody or violate their rights.
Makes sense.
So we have to have some kind of
There
safeguards.
must be
I don't know.
someone responsible, and that's a human.
Yes, the human has to be responsible for that. And the people that make these programs have to understand where it is. I think, is there some kind of controversy going on now with actually I forget what's it called? It begins with A, Anthropic with Claude. The government wants them to do certain things. I mean,
yeah,
that's what we're talking about. I believe the Trump administration wants them to do whatever they want them to do, and they believe that that violates the rights of people. Well,
yeah.
I don't. I'm not big on people having their rights violated. I understand why you're violating them. What you want to do this to protect national security, but I think Benjamin Franklin once said something to the effect, and I'm paraphrasing it, that when you try to protect the liberties of some, that you could fail, and a society that does that will basically be hurting most the people. And
Yeah, no,
I can't remember the
absolutely.
exact. It was some kind of quote by Benjamin Franklin, which really was right on the spot for that. And that's how I feel about it. You got to be really careful because people have rights, and I can just say that I I I like the idea of having a, AI, but I don't like the idea of it going too far without some kind of restrictions on it.
Mhm.
So typically, how then Alan you defend, right? So for example, there are some fake cases about this facial recognition. So and even there are some cases like facial recognition has put some of the innocent people in jail. So or wrongly arrested based on these bad AI matches. So as a defend client, how typically you defend against those algorithms? Like, are you
Well,
taking help of some technology, something of that sort to defend?
I believe that technology has to be. We're going in the future. You have to have technology to help defend some of these rights. Like I said earlier, simple thing is that with the body cams. It's making it near impossible for an attorney to look through so many body cams. And by the way, I found the quote. I have it in my note. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And Benjamin Franklin said that. And that was the quote I was thinking about. I wasn't even close, but that was the one I was thinking about. And that's what's really happening. If you have some of this technology police are using to protect yourself for the liberty, you're giving up your liberties. That's what happened when after 2001, when we had the bombings and the 9/11. We took away a lot of liberties of people and to try to protect liberties. Now, where do you draw that line?
Yeah. Okay. All right. No, perfect. Great insight. So I'm just changing a tangent little bit. So now AI is, everyone is saying that it is reshaping the legal profession itself, right? There is do not pay call itself the world's first robot lawyer. Now, various startups are selling AI legal advice directly to the consumers. So do you think that as a threat to the profession, or it is finally making legal help more accessible? What is your view?
My view is if you want to get a legal document that you don't care if it's just general, simple stuff, go to Office Depot and pick up the legal form for a durable power of attorney. But if you want to get legal advice that understands your concept, don't try to do it by using AI, because AI will not really understand the nuances or understand everything. I don't think it's a real threat to the profession unless you have everybody writing simple wills and doing simple things. I see Robert Shapiro. I saw him on TV a while back selling that legal forms and stuff like that. Some forms are great. It saves people money. I have no problem with that. And is it a threat to the legal profession? Well, I guess you could say the threat to some profits, but not a lot. But if it saves people money, why not? But AI doing anything more than something really basic, to me, for the individual person outside a lawyer, I recommend you go to a lawyer. I really would. I mean, my sister, for example, is trying to get her shower fixed. And I told her to go to 5, 6 different people. And she can use AI all day. I need to read that contract. I need to get a feel for what they're writing, what they're saying, and what they're not saying. But I also wanted to talk to each individual person. Why? Because nothing better than face to face. I mean, as a trial lawyer, I could have a list of AI questions to take a deposition or cross examine a witness at trial. But listening to their answers, looking at their facial expressions, seeing what they're doing or how they're responding, even hesitations, I may change my line of questioning on the spot and go a different way based on gut instinct and experience. Now, I know it sounds crazy because the AI could do all the other stuff, and it's a great starting point. I agree with that. As long as people understand it's a starting point, you can't be lazy. If lawyers are going to be lazy and just use I think they're going down a rabbit hole.
Yeah. So, like more and more bar association, I heard, are starting to issue guidelines on AI use. Right. So, do you think that legal profession is moving fast enough with those guidelines? Because AI is moving very fast, as we know. So, the governance within the legal profession, is it moving fast enough?
Well, that's a good question. There's been enough lawyers that have written AI briefs that cite cases that don't exist or cite cases that for a proposition that doesn't apply to the case. Now you could say, well, they just don't understand it. They're lawyers, but no. And sometimes you run into people. I know I've hired law clerks. I think it's a prime example. Compare a law clerk to AI. I've had law clerks that are very smart. One of them was my nephew when he started practicing law. He was a third-year law student. I hired him. And he wrote me up a memorandum of law, an issue I gave him. And I looked at it and I said, this kid's a really bright kid. What the heck did he give me here? If I didn't read it over, it sounded good. But when I started looking up what his basis was and his thinking, I had to redo the entire thing. Basically 90%. I don't want to say the entire thing in case he ever sees this, but it's probably 90% of it. But it's like a law clerk. It will go down a road, but it may be the wrong road it's going by because maybe it thinks that's what you're looking for. So the lawyer's never going to be out of business. Now, the contract lawyers, they may have less business because AI probably is pretty decent for a contract. If you're going to do a contract type of stuff and looking over what's in there and what's not, because general contracts, I'm not talking about these super big ones. I don't think I'd use AI for it except maybe to look it over and say, is there anything I'm missing in here or anything that's not clear, or summarize it for me or make it as I've written it, rewrite this so an 8-year-old can understand it. My son does that at school. He's in a graduate program for business at UCF. What he does is he looks at the notes and he goes, I don't know what this means sometimes. And he goes to his AI because he's more experienced than I am. And he goes, rewrite these notes or rewrite this, what I got, and please explain it to me like you were explaining to an 8-year-old. And he does that. And he says he's doing very well. He does his notes, he listens to the class, and then he has it rewrite it to make it even easier for him. And so there are some good places for AI where you can rely on it to some
There are
degree.
good places, but it requires much more understanding to even use AI.
Absolutely. I saw that with you, Mark, with what you were doing before and trying to wrestle it down from beginning to end from the California experience that we went through or you went
Yes.
through more so than I did, but we discussed it numerous times. And it's not you snap your fingers and suddenly you have something comes up and you got it. No, you need someone who understands what you're doing first. Like for a program, for example, for lawyers for setting up even just a simple program like lawyers setting up their office or keeping their calendar and keeping notes on the case and even billing. And then maybe I like the part of the program you can write down the conversation you have with the person and you can't change it again. In other words, there's a program like I use Clio. I don't like names. I don't know if I'll be using them next year. They raised the price on me too much this year, but I kept it. Their program doesn't do what the other program that you were involved in, Mark, does. I can put in today's date that I wrote something, and then I could change that date if I wanted to in the time. Whereas the program that you had before is better, I think, for Florida bar purposes, because I like to, when I meet with a client, right after I'm done, get on my computer, write down the conversation and what we discussed and have it down there, how much time I spent on it and what we discussed and what issues there were or promises made or anything of that nature. And then I put the time and it fills the time and date and I did this. That means later on, God forbid, somebody questions me. If I can't change that date and time, I can make a note later on. I made the wrong date and time. Maybe I apologize for it. I wrote it a day later, but the point is, it's there. You can't go changing it to make it meet your needs. To a Florida bar or any bar associate may say, "Well, where did you have this contemporaneous writing?" Right here. Well, if I'm using that program I just spoke about, almost any of the programs are out there now that I've examined. Because I told you, Mark, before I've examined 5 or 6 of these legal programs. They don't do that. The only one that did that is the one you were working on. And even though I forget sometimes, that's right in the next day. I think that is I think that's the best ethical program to do it that way, that you can't go changing the date. You put it in there because it would give you more credibility if anybody ever questions your work because you wrote it that date and time. So I like
Yeah.
certain programs that do that.
Yeah. QuickBooks has the same problem. When did you put this entry? And can you
Exactly.
change that?
Right. And I mean, it's easy to do a change because I remember stuff. Oh God, I just met with that client 2 days ago. And I said, oh God, now I got to make a note about it from 2 days ago. But I rather make the note and say, I met the client 2 days ago. Here's what was said. Than if I didn't do it that time, question me what you want. But if I did it at that time, I can't change it. And what's in there is in there. And that's the way it is. And I think that leads to more transparency if there's ever an issue later on in the case, or even with the judge or even with the bar association. You put it in there. So again, it's that weighing how you want to be able to use AI or use the software and what your thoughts are, how flexible you want to be.
Again and again, the same theme. AI is great. Humans are also great.
You have to have the combination of them both, and that's what's important. Going back to what you said, the individual buying these AI programs to give them law advice, kind of, you may want to ask them if
Yeah,
somebody wants to read the
I have
statute.
that case when they download my software for e-discovery. Sometimes they try to say, I heard that it can think like a lawyer. AI caught the thought, said, put in that you're not a lawyer. Put in
Right.
that it's only giving you advice. Don't think you're buying a law.
That's a great idea. They have to be clear about that because some people will think, even when they call me up, I'm giving advice. I told a gentleman that called me today, he was referred to me by a criminal defense client of mine, and somebody fell in his building where he was at, or his building, and they got hurt. And he said to me, well, can you help me? I said, I'm not a civil defense lawyer, but what I can tell you is, do you own anything? Because he hired this group, Morgan and Morgan, the biggest law firm down here in Florida, for litigation. And I know Morgan and Morgan, if you have no money, they're going to dump your case really quick because I have some people I know that had a great lawsuit, but the defendant had no money, so they dumped them. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It doesn't pay financially for them to sue somebody, get a large judgment they can't collect and spend all their time. So I told this client of mine, or a friend of a client of mine, I said, why don't you get me, do you have anything? He goes, no, no, no. Then suddenly he says, oh, by the way, I own a house with my sister. I said, well, that's something. I said, well, how do you own it? Do you own it equally? Do you own it tenants by the entirety with the right of survivorship? Why I use that term entirety by right of survivorship, that means it's indivisible. So they could sue him and they can't take that home from him because his sister owns it entirely with him, and whoever passes first, the other one owns it. So he's clear. He doesn't need to worry about Morgan and Morgan suing him because that asset they can't touch. But he finally sent me this is my free work for the week. He finally sent me the deed, and I saw it was a quick claim deed that did not have that language. So I immediately said to him, you got a problem now. I don't know how, that's beyond my expertise at this point. I know that basic part of the law. Here's the name of a civil lawyer I trust who does a lot of real estate. Call him up. You have to know what lane you're in, be it in AI or as an attorney, you got to know what lane you're in, because I couldn't give him advice. So I gave him enough advice that if it was owned in that way, he would have been fine. And because why? Because Morgan and Morgan would have dropped it and they wouldn't have got a law firm, and that would be the end of it. He wouldn't be sued. Now I don't know what's going to happen. I said, call an attorney that does this stuff for the rights. Probably if I had AI, I could ask it that question. It probably would answer it in Florida. It's not a hard question that AI could answer. Can someone still take a property you own if it's titled this way? And it would probably look up the Florida law and tell you generally yes, but I'd still want to know by a lawyer, because I went to an estate planning thing that was run by, I think, Charles Schwab. And somebody asked a question, can you put a house into You have homestead protection here in Florida. I don't know if that's the same way in Texas or not, but there's homestead. They can't take your house from you unless it's the mortgagee or someone has a
Same way.
mechanic's lien on it. So what happened was somebody said, if we put it in a revocable trust, do we still have protection? Because it's in a revocable trust. And the lady hesitated who answered it for Schwab. As soon as she hesitated, me as an attorney was ready to jump all over it because that meant I was getting an answer and I knew what may not be the full answer. Everything is there. And she says, well, yeah, it should be, but and I said, I raised my hand, of course. I said, well, I don't, this is not my part of the law, but I think the Fourth District Court of Appeals said that it is, but it's not settled within the state of Florida. And if somebody appeals it and it goes to another district, to the Supreme Court, it could change. And I said, are you aware of that? Well, I have that case. Can you send it to me? Sure. That was 8 weeks ago. Haven't got it yet. So you
I'm
don't
always
know.
overwhelmed by that level of analysis that you present.
Well,
It's
I don't,
wonderful.
it's not my field, but I read enough that I have
Yes.
enough I have enough knowledge to be a danger to people if I use outside my field. So I recognize that. But see, that's where I think AI's got the issues where it has knowledge, but it doesn't know where it will stop. I noticed instead of trying
Yes.
to pleasing that person, I said, go see someone with more knowledge than me. AI doesn't really say that. They try to please you.
No,
That's
it
the
never
hallucination
does.
part.
And yeah,
Some of
it's
it does.
always happy to answer that question.
But it does good memorandums. It really does. If it just
Yes.
wants that thought process thing, it could it like I said, 63 pages, it narrowed into 6, 7 minutes for me. I was very impressed with it, and it was accurate. It was all it could be I couldn't have written it better. Now, I did make a few changes to make it sound more like me because it didn't sound like me, and I wanted it to be my argument, but I saw how it cut out stuff, and it seemed to fit all right with it after I reviewed it and compared it. Made some changes, but it saved me hours. So it will save people AI will save people a lot of time.
Yeah. And then some people argue, right? AI could make the justice system more fair because it removes the human biases from judge and juries. So do you actually buy that? Even a little, I would say.
Well, I could be making the wrong analogy now, but years ago, they made the federal courts had guidelines, and you couldn't give someone less than a certain amount of jail time if they got arrested for certain things. And sometimes 3 strikes you're out, kind of 25-year thing in California. You commit 3 felonies over your life, you're going to spend 25 to life in prison. And they could be stealing candy from a store. And is that fair? Bias is being removed. If you make them rigid, which they would be, I guess, in AI, you're not taking the person into consideration. And I think in all situations, you don't know. Some people have gone through, I don't believe in the abuse excuse. Oh, my parents beat me when I was a kid. That's why I killed 7 people. That doesn't go for me. But there are situations where it's important to have compassion and understand where the defendant, the accused is, or the criminal is. If they've been convicted, I think it's important to AI can look stuff over, but hopefully you have judges that have more AI. I don't know if it'll ever get compassion and be able to be more like a person. So I understand the guidelines. I've seen them come up with this stuff. I've heard of what you're talking about, but until I see we're there, I believe it's better to have a human there. Just hopefully you don't have a human that the governor appointed or the president appointed that is a human that doesn't think like the average human being. I mean,
Okay.
look at
Now makes
Our
sense.
Supreme Court. It's the same way, right? We have the Supreme Court that thinks one way, totally different than the previous Supreme Court from 30, 40 years ago, and they're overturning cases. All depends who it is up there judging. We all have biases.
What do you want listener to walk away with thinking about? Like anything last notes before we end up to this? So
Well, I believe there's a place in our society for AI, and I believe that we need responsible companies that are running these AI programs and they understand the positive and negatives of each program to a degree as best they can, and they keep working to make it better. And AI is the future. I believe that. It's just how much of it we're going to use in place of human thought, which I don't think anybody can replace the human mind for certain things and the human heart.
Beautiful.
thank you so much, Alan. It has been really
Alan,
pleasant
thank you.
talking to you.
Pleasure meeting you. It's good to see you, Mark, again. It was my pleasure being here. My honor. Thank you.